Imagine two huge countries. One is America, the place we dreamed of being in when we stood in endless lines for everything and listened to the voice of America at night. I don't know about you, but I used to listen. The other is China, which back then was just a big poor country to us, with red flags and Mao on all the posters. And now these two countries are fighting not with tanks and missiles, at least not yet, but with money, factories, technology, ports, and even the chips in our phones. This fight is already hitting our wallets, the prices in stores, our pensions, and our children's jobs. I'll start from the very beginning because most people think the conflict started just yesterday, or maybe the day before, when Trump supposedly started waving tariffs around again. In 1972, Richard Nixon, who was the president of the United States at the time, got on a plane and flew to Beijing to meet with Mao Zedong. The American president shakes hands with the Chinese dictator, and both of them smile as if they're old friends. Why? Because at that moment, America was afraid of an alliance between the USSR and China. The Soviets had atomic missiles aimed at Washington, and the Americans decided to pull China away from Moscow. And China was offered American technology and credit. Basically, it was a marriage of convenience. That's right, a marriage of convenience is usually the strongest. Time passed in 2001. The calculation is right, of course. Time passed in 2001. China was admitted to the WTO and was given developing country status. They were able to sell in other countries without high tariffs, but at the same time, they had the right to restrict imports to protect themselves. And that's when the Chinese miracle happened. China turned into a huge factory for everything in the world. Everything we buy, from underwear and socks to TVs and iPhones, started being made there. Cheap, fast, and high quality. American companies were happy. We order from China and get the product for a fraction of the price we used to pay. Either way, profits go up, prices go down, and consumers are happy. But after 20 to 25 years, something happened that, well, you could say, hadn't happened before, and now here it is again. China didn't just remain a cheap factory, it started getting smarter. They learned to make not only socks, but also cutting-edge chips, 5G networks, electric cars, and artificial intelligence. Companies like Huawei and BYD, companies started to surpass American ones. China built the largest military fleet in the world. At the same time, China started stealing. Yes, I think they started stealing a long time ago. The Soviet Union was also doing this. For years, they sent spies and thieves to our universities, laboratories, and military research centers for American technologies. Americans realized we lost manufacturing, but the Chinese are also stealing our technologies, ideas. They take apart our inventions, reverse engineer them, and sell the stolen products all over the world, even back to us. Plus, the Chinese don't let our goods into their market, but they send us products below cost. It's called dumping. To kill our industries and take over the markets when our production disappears. And so the factories were shut down. Ohio, Michigan. Millions are jobless. Technology is leaking money. Even American presidents found a good place to borrow money in this process, China. Now we owe them huge amounts with interest, naturally. And in 2018, Trump said, that's it, enough. He imposed a tariff, first 25, then 50% on Chinese steel and aluminum. He imposed tariffs on electronics. He did what needed to be done to make trade fair. But China has already gotten used to this, so for them, when you borrow for a long time, you're taking someone else's. But when you pay it back, you're giving away your own. So instead of changing their behavior, they responded in kind. What is called a trade war began. Trump stated that if China doesn't fully open its market, the tariffs will be 100%, maybe even higher. What does each side want? China wants, first of all, not to let American goods into its market. Secondly, not to let itself be cut off from the American market. In other words, to have its cake and eat it too. We use high tariffs to cut off anyone we want from our market. Plus, they want Taiwan. Here's something else. They want the world to not be unipolar. They believe they've developed enough and have also become a superpower. A unipolar world means America is in charge, and a multipolar world is where China sets the rules, at least in Asia, and maybe even beyond. Basically, they want to continue the same practices as before, and they have the tools to push us away from our demands. For example, the US doesn't produce antibiotics, and China could stop selling us those and other medical drugs that we also don't make here. Then thousands of people would die in hospitals. Secondly, we don't extract or produce, let's say, rare earth elements. They are needed everywhere, including in the military production sector, and China holds a monopoly on them. We won't last long without them. On the other hand, China needs oil and gas. They don't produce it domestically. We can make supplying oil to China a very difficult task. And now we've also taken control of Venezuela and Iran, cutting China off from cheap oil. America wants to bring manufacturing back home. It wants Made in USA to mean something again. It wants China to stop stealing technology. They do steal, that's a fact. There are thousands of cases in court. And most importantly, it wants to keep the dollar as the world currency and not let China surpass it in technology and military power. How could all this develop? How could it end? Now let's talk about 4 real scenarios. Option 1. The most boring one, but the most likely one right now. A cold peace. Trump and Xi meet. They should meet soon. They smile for the cameras, and they agree to lower tariffs. Taiwan remains in the gray zone. No one touches anyone. Trade continues. Prices rise slowly. Everyone pretends that nothing serious has happened, and nothing will happen. The second option, a trade war. Tariffs are at 100%, supply chains collapse. The next phone will cost $1,500 to $2,000. Many factories in California and Texas will shut down because without Chinese parts, spare parts, components, chips, and so on, nothing can be assembled. Option 3. The chips aren't Chinese, I mean rare earths. Option 3. Escalation to a hot conflict. China starts a blockade of Taiwan. They aren't firing yet, but they're blocking ships. Kind of like what America did during the Cuban Missile Crisis. With Cuba, America brings in the fleet. Nobody wants to fire first. But the tension is so high that one accidental shot and that's it. They stop buying chips. Prices skyrocket 3 or 4 times, the stock market drops. A third. 40%. This is the worst-case scenario for our pensions and savings. Option 4. Actually, this is the best one for us. China falls apart. The economy is cracking. Young people can't find jobs. Protests. Xi loses control. Then China becomes like Russia in the 1990s. Chaos. But unlike Russia back then, it's open for investment. America wins, but chaos in China is also a global crisis. It won't be insignificant, like when Brzezinski once invented the fire. On the border of the Soviet Union, fire. A religious fire. He drove out the Shah, put the Ayatollah in power, and the fire broke out. But for some reason, the flame didn't want to go in just one direction. It spread in different directions, everywhere, and it caught fire everywhere. The same thing could happen here. It will catch fire everywhere. And now the main question. Is a normal relationship possible? Not friendship, forget about that. Just trade without war. Cold War, hot war, and of course the answer is yes, it's possible. But for that, both sides have to admit it. We are competitors, not enemies. And restart negotiations based on mutual respect. Respect for goals, objectives, and concerns of the opposing side. China is actively trying to undermine the US dollar and is developing its own currency. The US wants it now. They want to stop being the policeman of the whole planet. They want every major country to be responsible for its own region. Maybe on this basis, China will see that America is not trying to be the world leader and will accept the idea of regional domains. Spheres of influence where major states are responsible for order, not starting wars. Not escalating the situation just because you want to throw an atomic bomb at someone. In this case, a sector on the ground is controlled by a major country. Inside these sectors, trade is tariff-free, but between the sectors, there are tariffs. However, there are no wars. If China and America realize that war will destroy everyone, they will understand not with their heads, but with other parts of their bodies. We will find a way to trade and compete without bloodshed, but for that we need the truth. It's very important for us, too, to spread the truth. Many of our compatriots still believe propaganda, Russian, Chinese, American domestic propaganda, too. More exposure to these explanations will make things clearer. Who is to blame for the bad things, and who made it so that life got better? And gentlemen, in this regard, subscribe. And make sure to hit the bell. It's right next to the subscribe button. I'll tell you this. If less than 20% of subscribers hit the bell, the algorithm hides us. And we end up stuck in our own bubble, but if they do hit it, the videos spread to all Russian speakers in America, in Israel, in Europe. Share them, hit the bell. I believe with Trump it will become possible to save the world from constant wars, to organize trade and competition so that it is fair and balanced for everyone. Trump has already shown that he knows how to conduct tough negotiations, but with the goal of peace, not conquest, peace and mutual benefit, in order to. For the opposing side to agree with you, you either have to force them, and then they will do everything they can to get out of this agreement, or you need to find a way so that both sides are satisfied. Well, maybe they reached a compromise. Of course, I would have liked more, but what I got is good too. So Trump is focused on fair trade, where no one is stealing. He doesn't strangle competitors. Everyone competes by the rules. Under his leadership, the U.S. could become an example of how to build relationships based on respect, not domination. And this will lead to global prosperity, where each side develops without threatening others. In the end, everyone will win. From our grandchildren in America to people in China and Russia, Vietnam, Hungary, Ukraine, Israel, and so on. That's all. Goodbye.